How's it going, everybody? I had an idea a while back, and I've kind of been piecemealing it lately, where I would make a digital course, make a video course for a beginner who's just started making pottery, so that you could learn how to throw and sort of take the steps up to making a teapot and following more or less a class schedule to learn different techniques that build up to eventually being able to make a teapot. And the first step in that journey is to make a cup, because oftentimes the first thing you're going to make anyway on the wheel is sort of a cup slash bowl. It's easier to make something with a wider rim than base than it is to make a perfect cylinder. So oftentimes what you end up with is a shallow bowl or cup. So today the idea is that we're going to make a couple of different shallow bowls and cups and put them together to make a gaiwan. So I'm going to center something that resembles a soup can. You can use a small piece of clay on the wheel head if you want to follow along. I'm going to always throw off the hump because it's more efficient for me, because I can just bring up more clay and continue to work. But you're going to center about half a pound of clay, and then open it up with your thumbs or your fingers or whatever's the most comfortable for you. The important thing is that you have a nice consistent movement and that you're applying pressure evenly. It's not about strength, I promise. There are all sorts of people who are stronger than me and maybe not as strong as me who can throw just as well or better than I can. So it's about the way the pressure is applied, not how much pressure is applied. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've already got this like sort of set up bowl shape going. I'm going to start and use my thumb to make a little ridge to kind of tell myself that that's my depth stop. That's as far down as I want to go. And then I'm going to start shaping the gaiwan. So a gaiwan wants to be round on the bottom, semi-spherical, maybe like a slightly open, like a parabola on the bottom. And then you want a lip that comes out a little bit higher than flat. So you don't want it to be flat, but you don't want it to be too up curving. And you want a clear delineation between sort of the brewing space and the pouring lip. So this is generally the shape that I'm looking for. A nice sort of shallow uniform bowl, and then a lip that comes out at an angle, but not too high and not too low, sort of 30 degrees. So this is a good example of what I want from a gaiwan. I'm going to go ahead and cut this one off. And if you're trying to do this and you're working through it and you're getting frustrated, the best suggestion that I have is to make a thing, just anything, something, and cut it off the wheel and start again. Because each process is as important as the last. Centering is really important. Opening is really important. Pulling up the walls, super important. Shaping, that's shaping is really where you get to the point where you're making things intentionally. And that's a huge milestone, right? Initially, you're just gonna make what you've made, and you should be really proud of what you've made. But once you get to the point where you're throwing things very intentionally, that's when you're sort of at a point where you can start making things that fit together and that are useful for particular purposes. So this is what I want from a gaiwan. The next thing I'm going to do is the lid. So I didn't measure that gaiwan, but my general measurement is this tool. I use from here to here where the bevels are. So inside the bevels, that's the measure that I use for the outside of the gaiwan, and we hit it pretty well dead on. And then usually I use a caliper to measure the lid size. So you want it to hit just above the shoulder or the ridge. And I already set these calipers up last night, so they're about right. And it's going to be hard for me to show you. Oh wait, actually I have some that I threw yesterday, so I can show you guys sort of what the fit I'm looking for is. So the next thing I'm going to do is pull up about a 1/4 pound of clay, and that's what I'm going to make my lid with. So with lids, luckily there's not much pulling to it. It's really just a matter of making a divot in the clay and then using a rib to sort of guide it out where you need it. So you pull up this little lump of clay. Lana's trying to get comfy on my lap. She spends most of the day on the radiator staying warm, but at nighttime she likes to come hang out with me. So here she is, my studio assistant. So you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna open it up with your thumbs. I hope that you guys can see sort of what's going on. My phone is in a cup right now. That's my tripod, so I can't see exactly what's going on, but hopefully you can see. And I'm gonna dish this out just like a little bowl. And you have to be careful, because if you try to make it too wide all at once, it's gonna wanna collapse on you. But if it's too cupped, then it makes it really awkward to try to balance it on the bowl. So you want it basically as shallow as you can make it without it wanting to collapse on you. And don't worry about making this really thick, right? You can always come back after trimming and make things a little bit more delicate or dainty. So for now, all we're concerned about, all you should worry about when you start, is the inside shape of what you're making. And then when we come back, when it's leather hard, we can flip it upside down on the wheel and we can fix that profile. So I'm gonna come in with a rib. You might have a wooden rib. This is a nice firm plastic rib made by Mud Tools. This is not an endorsement, they're just my favorite ribs. And I'm gonna use this tool and my finger underneath to guide the clay out, just like I'm pulling, but I'm using the rib to support it so that I can keep the curve in the clay as I'm working. And I'm gonna flatten it out, like I said. And then this is something that I find really important with gaiwans. First, I'm gonna measure, because I think I've gotten it a little bit too big, and I have. So I'm gonna cut off maybe 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch from the lip here. I'm gonna use a needle tool. And I'm just gonna go from underneath and always support everything. Support it from below and take away a ring of clay. And then I'm gonna grab a chamois. You can use synthetic chamois, you can use your fingers. I like having a chamois around for smoothing lips, just because my fingers are often quite rough from cuts and scrapes and working with clay, so I want a little bit of a more delicate touch. You can also use a sponge. But the thing that I'm gonna do here is I'm essentially gonna make a rim that looks sharp from the top and rounded from the bottom. I'll show you this a little bit closer, but basically the thought is that the edge of the rim should come to a point very quickly from a slightly thicker rim. That way you have a really nice substantial rim that sits really nicely in the bowl, but won't chip. And if the rim is too thin, then it also has a hard time rocking on the vessel. So you want a pretty thick rim. You want to leave a good amount of material there. So I'm going to measure again. If I have to, I can make it bigger from the center, but that's pretty spot on. So this is basically what I want. I'm going to refine this lip just a little bit more. And I've flattened the curve out a little bit too much now. I can see that it's starting to sag. So again, I'm going to go in with the rib and I'm going to guide it with my finger on the back. I'm going to put the curve back in, and that's about where I want it. Then I'm going to grab this nice little wooden tool. These usually come in like beginner pottery packs. This one I made out of bamboo, but you can make them out of any scrap wood you have around. And then I'm just going to make my mark. And with gaiwan lids, I'm going to leave a big hunk of clay underneath this when I cut it off. And I suggest you do the same, because this way you can trim the handle into the lid. I'm going to cut this off. And there you go. So nice dished rim, and you can see there's that little shadow there where the rim is pretty chunky, but it still comes to a fine point, and I'm going to refine that more from the outside edge. So that's what our lid looks like. And then give me just a moment. I'm going to clean my hands up and put Lana Bird on her chair in my studio, and then I'll show you one of the gaiwans that I made yesterday to see what they look like at leather hard and sort of what the fit looks like. All right, Bird. Thank you. Okay. So here's one of the ones I threw yesterday. You can see I leave a pretty good chunk of clay on the lid. It has that same rim that's sort of thicker to a thin edge. And then my vessel, and you can see the lid doesn't sit super deep, but it also doesn't sit too close to the edge. And that's so that you can make a nice edge without tipping the lid too much. And I like to make my gaiwans so they're held like this, but I know some people like to hold them like this, and this is a size that will be good for that as well. Hopefully this is helpful. Tune in. Next time I'll probably be talking about trimming gaiwans and how you fit the outside shape to the inside shape that you've made. Focus on the inside shape, try not to get frustrated, and work it out. Do it a lot. You've got a whole lifetime to make pottery. Have fun with it. Cheers, everybody.